Hey everybody, welcome once again to another episode of Fixated on Real Estate Experts Live. I am your host, Tarl Yarber. Today we have a special show with three guests that we all love and hold dear to our hearts. We have three of the Bigger Pockets podcast hosts joining us today. We have the Brandon Turner from the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Podcast. We have Ashley Kehr with the Bigger Pockets Rookie Real Estate Podcast. And of course, my perpetual guest, and this is the reason why he can't be the co-host, the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast. Now, why did we choose this? This is the end of the year. It's the end of 2020. A lot of crazy crap has happened this year, and we have a lot of reflection. All of us have made mistakes this year in real estate, advice that we would have never given anybody that we actually gave to ourselves, some lessons learned, major missed opportunities. And what does that all mean for going into 2021? What are some things that we completely changed and pivoted in our businesses in order to be able to become more successful based on the things that we learned in 2020 and the things that maybe you can do in your business, some action steps, some action plans, some ways to be able to get into 2021 and actually either take your first step or be able to go with full commitment into your 100th step or wherever you are in your real estate business. So this is a great show. We have a lot of fun. I love shows like this because these are all friends of mine. You can totally tell we all have a good time. I think you're going to enjoy it. A lot of great gold bricks, not gold nuggets, were given on this episode. And happy holidays and happy new year. Enjoy this show. We're here today to talk about 2020 mistakes and lessons learned. This has been probably the most weirdest effing year of all time, as we all know. And a lot of amazing things happen. A lot of horrible things happen. A lot of horrible things are still happening. But on one side note with real estate, though, it didn't go quite as bad as we thought it would, right, this year. And Ashley, this is your first time on the show, but we had Brandon here on the show earlier this year when the lockdowns were happening and nobody really knew what was going on. And I would be curious to rewatch that show, which I haven't done, to see what our projections were on that show with what would happen with the rest of the year. But I wanted to take some time today and kind of, because all four of us are in real estate. We've done a lot of stuff. We all had different projections earlier this year. And what were our biggest mistakes and lessons that maybe we had in 2020 in real estate, and some things we maybe learned from them that we can carry over to 2021 to share with other people, as well as some of our projections and ideas of what we might be doing in our own personal businesses going into 2021, and maybe even also some of our biggest wins that we had in 2020 and lessons and mistakes that we learned from all of that as well. Does that sound good to everybody? You guys good with that? 2020. Well, I ask each of you guys a different question for this, but we all invest in real estate and we all did some fancy stuff. Jay Scott, I'm going to start with you. Now, earlier this year, you and I have done shows almost every single week for the last few months, right? And also prior to this as well. And the person that did the shows with me back in April versus the person today is not the same Jay Scott, even though it is. And
you're about to ask me the wrong question. I don't want to talk about successes.
Let's talk about mistakes.
That's what I want to talk about. Because people can learn from mistakes. Nobody's going to learn from my successes. So let me teach people. Let me talk about the things I've screwed up.
Teach to us.
Okay. I relearned a big lesson. So for 10 years now, if people ask me what's the most important thing to do as a business owner or a real estate investor, my answer is you need to take responsibility. The buck stops with you. You never blame anybody else. If anything goes wrong in your business, it is your fault. And the number of people I hear saying, oh, the lender screwed up or my partner screwed up or my real estate agent. No, it's your business. If something goes wrong, it's your problem. And I always believe that. I've never wavered from that. But this year I made a couple mistakes where I didn't let the buck stop with me and I trusted other people and things went wrong. And I realized that my lack of oversight, my lack of involvement really hurt us. So specifically, we bought two properties right down the street from one another. Both we were holding as rentals. One, we got a tenant in there and we realized that we had some major plumbing issues. Like at some point we have to tear up all the drain lines under the slab and whatever. We patched it up a little bit. And so that was a good learning lesson. But the problem is I didn't learn. Like I saw that it happened to me. I dealt with it. It was a pain in the ass. And then I turn around in the house right down the street that we were rehabbing afterwards. I didn't dig in to make sure that there are no plumbing issues. And here we are today, about a month later, tenant moves in last week and we find plumbing issues in that one too. And so let me just point out, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done hundreds of flips. I own a lot of rentals. My partner owns a whole lot more rentals than I do. These are not the types of mistakes that I should be making, but I do. And so anybody out there, you're going to make these mistakes too. Learn from them. Take control of the stuff you do. Learn from your mistakes. Don't blame other people. Don't expect other people to do the right thing. And so it was an expensive lesson. So this is going to end up being a $25,000 lesson across 2 properties for me. And I take responsibility for it, but it's an opportunity for everybody else out there to learn from my mistakes.
Thank you for sharing that, Jay. Right. Now, what also on top of that was, what do you think was one of your biggest missed opportunities that you had in 2020?
I don't like to have regrets. But
we all have them.
We all have them. Yeah, I wish I would have bought a whole lot more properties between February and July. So we've bought about a dozen rentals in the last 3 or 4 months, which is great. But there were some great deals that we passed up on February, March, April, May, because I didn't know where the market was headed. And I forgot the golden rule, which is if you'll hold it long enough, it doesn't matter what you buy it for today. Because eventually, as long as it cash flows, the value is eventually going to come back. And I passed up on some good cash flowing deals because I was too concerned about the value, even though I was planning to hold it long term. So I wish I wouldn't have missed out on a few deals earlier in the year that I skipped because I was so concerned about values.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people listening to this right now that are also like, yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years.
I've been doing that for 10 years.
I've been doing that for 10 years. So we all have at some point. So Ashley, for you, being here, like, I'll be honest, like, I don't know what you invest in. Can you help us understand that? Yeah. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I do buy and hold outside of Buffalo, New York. So mostly duplexes, triplexes, single family. I don't do anything out of state yet. So I started out buying properties that were undervalued, and just did cosmetic little tiny updates to them, increase the rents, and then would burr out of them, buy the next one with that and keep going. And then I started last year, I actually started getting into really big rehab jobs. And then that's what I'm working on now.
And then earlier this year in 2020, when all hell was breaking loose and still is, what was your projections for your business earlier this year? And then where did they end up going this year?
Well, the big thing for me this year was putting systems in place and trying to outsource as much as I could. So kind of to play off what Jay had said, as I outsourced my property management, and it was great. I did it in February and then COVID hit. So they took care of everything for me. And it was just like, wow, this is really nice. Well, then I got too comfortable in outsourcing things. And I got into that, like, this is too easy mode. And I started outsourcing other things without, like Jay had said, that oversight and really making sure that the systems were tight enough and working well enough before I gave things to other people to handle. And it did like catch up on me for a couple of things. And I almost had to backtrack and kind of restart things. But that was it was good, I guess, that it happened during COVID because I had a lot more time. I wasn't traveling. My kids were home. So if anything, this was the year to really put systems in place for me. And then I had a large rehab going on where I actually did a lot of the work myself with my partner. And we had so much time to work on the rehab. His full-time job was not happening. So he was able to be there every day. So there was some advantages we had to COVID, but my biggest lesson learned was getting too comfortable and thinking things are getting easy. But you really have to stay focused on what you're doing and not kind of like take your hand off the ball.
Yeah. And you can over delegate. So
yeah,
there's a balance there as some of us might know. So what about missed opportunities?
I delegated all my push-ups for the year. It's been amazing. I got this kid who just like does them for me. It's awesome. You should see my arms. They're just getting
yeah. They're not toned, but they're getting bigger. So what about missed opportunities for you then, Ashley? Like, did you miss out on any major real estate opportunities?
Well, I did. There was this building I had looked at for like 3 years, and I finally purchased it last November with the realization that I wanted to put a liquor store in this building. So it was a 4-unit mixed use. And I had waited so long to buy it because I wanted a great price and I didn't know what to do with it. And then I figured out a liquor store. Well, I didn't end up getting my liquor license until this past September. Well, in New York State, a liquor store is an essential business, and they were cash cows this past year. They did not have to shut down. A great business to have in New York State this past year. And we did not open until this past September. So we kind of missed a great year of revenue. So I guess like looking back, I wish I would have purchased the building earlier, started my reservation sooner, and started applying for my liquor license sooner.
Oh yeah. If you were in the alcohol business here, you definitely skyrocketed for sure. Like, it's a funny thing. I actually started not too long ago investing in sober living houses. So like there's the other side of it. I'm like, all right, maybe I should help invest in your liquor store and then do the sober living houses as well. But no, that is actually pretty big opportunity there as far as what you did with the liquor store. So you have that now or no?
Yeah. So it fully opened. We had like our soft opening and then our grand opening November 5th.
Oh, congrats. So don't worry.
Thank you.
There'll be plenty more drinking coming in 2021.
Yeah. Well, the holidays are here, so.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be a lot of drinking still in 2021 to come. Yeah. So Brandon, your turn. You just started in real estate. I know you said you were a janitor earlier when we got started. But did you have any, for you've seen it. In all honesty, like you've interviewed tons of people. You were in the forefront when the lockdown was happening, interviewing as many people as possible, getting out there, figuring out what was going on with other investors, and trying to give some hope to the people out there in some capacity, possibly, right? And what experiences did you see for yourself in real estate, for you personally, in Open Door Capital, your investments that you have in Grays Harbor and other places, mistakes maybe you made, lessons learned, anything you can share?
Sure. Let's see. So a few things. Yeah. When everything kind of melted down, I really went into that, like you said, kind of a proactive, what are we going to do about this rather than just relying on stuff, and ended up, we didn't really need any of it. Like I thought, I think all of us feared like half our tenants were going to stop pay rent and stop paying. And I think we had one tenant in Grays Harbor who had a COVID type issue, and he ended up getting, assistance from the government and ended up paying it back. So that was good. And then our mobile home park business, I think, I don't know, 95, 96, 97% occupancy, and very, very few vacancies or anything wrong. Like very few people didn't pay rent. So that was just really nice to see. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2021 as they just print more money and just hopefully hopefully we can take either approach to that. But my assumption is we're going to be the same in 2021, if not better than we were this year in terms of tenants being able to afford rent. That's my guess. I guess this year, a couple of things I realized. First of all, I don't call this a regret, but I talked about mobile home parks so much because we're raising money in a big fund that I'm pretty sure I just like quadrupled the industry of mobile home parks. Cap rates are now lower on mobile home parks than they are in apartment complexes. And every single person I know pretty much is in mobile home parks. So that was, again, it wasn't me, but I think everyone realized, when things go wrong, like mobile home parks would be a great investment to be in. So what we found is in the beginning of the year, we had a lot of luck, a lot of yeses on our offers. And then as the year went on, we got fewer and fewer. I mean, we just got one last week. We got another one, and we bought 1,000 units last year. So it's not like we didn't do anything, but it is becoming increasingly more difficult to find deals. So I guess the regret is it would have been nicer to front load that better before everything went crazy.
Well, I think one of the challenges that you have though, is that, affordable housing has been being talked about for a number of years. Yeah. But it's kind of a catch-22 for you, Brandon, because you sit there and you go, okay, do I not talk about what I'm investing in? Exactly. And then you don't get to raise capital, right? Because you also, on the other side, all the talk that you did raised a lot of capital for you. And then on the other side, because of your platform, you're also getting guys go that's a really good idea. I should get affordable housing and mobile home parks, so you increase your competition too.
Yeah, I did that in Grays Harbor a few years ago. I talked about real estate so much in Grays Harbor, and Grays Harbor was so cheap that Grays Harbor, Washington, that every single person I competed with was somebody that I taught how to invest in real estate. Like my own family, like in-laws and everything. Everybody was. I'm you go, you have a house come on the market and there's 7 offers and 6 of them are people that I know really well, and then one's me. So it's okay. It's good. It's okay. Competition makes us better. So we've been really focusing this year on what can we do better than every single other person. It's what's our unique ability, to use a Dan Sullivan line. So for us, it's infill. Like we want to tackle infill. If you're trying to get into mobile home parks right now, or, it doesn't matter what, but let's just use that for example. Like, I think there's such value in the thing. You know what? We're going to be really good at like septic lagoons. Like they're like a terrible wastewater thing. We won't touch them. Like we just don't want septic lagoons, or like lagoons are just terrible. But that's because we don't understand them and I don't want to deal with them. But if you want to get into a niche, like find something that like you could be like, yeah, I'm the guy who buys that one. We interviewed a woman on the podcast a few weeks ago. Her like niche is sinkhole houses, like houses in Florida that have been like in danger of a sinkhole and like swallowed up by holes. And that's just what she does. And she's really good at it. And so she just nails that niche. So anyway.
So, some of the most successful people I've met in not just real estate, in other industries, when they get a niche and they just dive into it and just like become the expert in it. And there's a lot of people out there that are like business consultants that kind of talk about like, get that niche. What is that niche? And just drive home on it as fast as possible. And I think too many people in real estate, we start out and we try to do everything in real estate, and we don't make as much money. And I know for me, for years I fixed and flipped, but I did a lot of other stuff before then. And then it wasn't until I said I flip houses in Tacoma and Seattle and Portland at that time, and that's all I do, right? And I had a specific buy criteria. As soon as I did that, highest income year of my life, right? And when I was just like, that's all I do, right?
So it's so true.
So there's one question, Kish, and we got some other, if you're on the Q&A, I kind of like this question. I got one story to share on that since it's my turn. I'd like to hear what your worst experience was, if any, during 2020, and what you would have done differently. So for me, earlier this year during the lockdown in Washington, they shut down all construction, right? You weren't allowed to do any construction whatsoever. And Washington was the only state that did that. But no construction unless it was like essential, like you had like a grant from the government, or like something was going on with roads, or who knows, right? Something, completely political. And so everything else was not essential whatsoever. So you couldn't do it. Well, we had a $2.8 million development deal. That was the resale for these finished lots. And we were like a week away from finishing the finished lots in order to finally sell them based on a contract we already had in place. And the way that it worked for the contract was we had a close date that we had to meet, but we were freaking out that we couldn't meet this close date because we couldn't do the construction. We couldn't finish up the cement work and the asphalt work that needed to be done on it. And so we're freaking out because then we're also like, well, crap, if we can't get this done and we lose this purchase and sales agreement and this escrow, nobody's going to buy this because the whole world's going to shut down now and nobody's going to want these finished lots. And we had like 1.8 into it, right? So we're like, we're screwed, right? We've worked on this project for 2 years, like to get to this point, and now we can't work on it. And we got like 45 days to close on this thing. We have a week worth of work left. And now all of a sudden the buyer's going to drop out and they're going to be like, thank God we don't need to close on this thing because the whole world's going to implode and we're all going to lose our money. So that was a lot of stress up in my head in April when all this was happening. And so that was the worst thing that happened to us. Now, positive side is that we figured out a whole bunch of loopholes and who to talk to and figure it out. And we got it all done through our team. And we were able to close. And now looking back, I'm like, man, we should have kept those lots. That would have been a really great thing. We should be building those because they're skyrocketing in price right now in that area. We just want to be done with it, right? And just move on, whatever it took. And because we were terrified of what might happen with them. It's such a big deal for us, at least. So that was a big mistake. Not mistake. That was the big, whatever that was, panic moment. Worst thing that happened to us this year. That ended up being good, but it sucked at that time. So Jay has a call with the contractor, so he stepped out rudely. He'll be right back. Brandon, what was your biggest mistake or situation this year?
It happened very early in the year. It wasn't even from COVID, but I think I just partnered with the wrong person, and I brought in the wrong partner and offered too much equity. Not the wrong person, wonderful person, just wrong person for that role. Was the wrong seat on the bus, to use Jim Collins' picture. But so early in the year, just partnered with the wrong. It didn't work out right, but I offered way too much equity. There's a thing about equity. When you offer equity in your company or in real estate deals, the more equity you offer, the lower you value yourself. And what I mean by that is, think if you're going to go start a business selling watches, right? Like you're going to make like watches, and you bring in a partner and you're like, hey, I'll give you 50%. Like it's unlike, like if it's almost like you don't value your company and you don't think you're going to be all that successful, because I'm sure Steve Jobs didn't give 50% to the first employee that came in or the first partner that came in. Maybe he did early on, but in other words, like I didn't know it would do as well as I did in terms of growth. And so I probably gave too much equity, and now it's just going to, sit with me for a long, long time on those deals. So my first fund, I learned that. So that was probably the biggest mistake. And that's just one of those like learning things you figure out as you go.
That's a tough lesson. I think most of us with partners or JVs or anything like that have definitely experienced that at some point in our careers. And like Jay Scott and I did a brief show a few weeks ago that was all about us bitching about joint ventures and partnerships that have gone wrong in our businesses and stuff, and the mistakes we've made on that. But there are also great ones. I mean, you have a great partnership with Brian and so forth, Brian Murray and a number of other people that have gone right. But we learned those right ones from the ones that went wrong. At some
Correct.
point.
Yeah, you learn how to do it better from the ones that you learned how to do it badly. So yeah.
Ashley, what about you? What was your absolute besides the liquor store? You said you had some delegation issues, and we have a question from Eric about this, like outsourcing gone wrong. What were some of your big mistakes on the delegation side?
Well, first I'll touch on one thing that was directly impacted by COVID that we had. So it wasn't really a mistake. It was just something from COVID. But we had bought this foreclosure property. It was vacant, and it needed a new gas line, and it was the gas company's responsibility because it went from the meter to the road. And so we had called in the end of June, early July for someone to come out. And that's when they told us they couldn't even find the valve. So we had, we're like, yes, we want construction. We want a new line put in. Never heard anything back. Then we call again. And because they had been shut down to only doing essential services from March to, I don't know, May, maybe, they were so behind. And since the building was vacant, we were just like put on the bottom of the list, and we just got the gas line replaced 2 weeks ago. So this was something that usually the gas company could do, like turn over in a week for us. Yep. And it took, 3 to 4 months. So that was one thing. And it did hold us up because right now we're doing the drywall in there, and we couldn't mud it or finish the drywall without having the heat on, which we needed the gas. And then for the delegation, so we were opening the liquor store. And then we used to do our own rehab. So in the liquor store building, we did the residential unit, and then we did the 2 commercial units, and then left the other residential alone. But me and my partner did almost all of the rehab for that ourselves. And then we decided, we really like not doing the property management. Let's try not doing the rehab. And that's why this one rehab now where the gas was just replaced is taking so long, because we were just like, do this, take care of it. And we didn't have the proper systems in place for delegating who was managing the rehab, the systems in place for the contractors as to like the timeline as to when they were going in. So that took us about, all summer and a little into the fall to finally like fine tune that and get all that in place. But a lot of it was learning on the rehab, and then also our bookkeeping. We had a situation where when we put in our first order for the liquor store, we had put we had credit with some of the vendors so that, they would just send us a bill and we had 30 days to pay. Well, our bookkeeper made a late payment, so we lost credit with them. So that was like another thing. But definitely been a learning experience as to giving up control and then learning that, it feels good, but it's not as easy as it seems.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say on a related note, I had we owed like $50,000 to the state of Hawaii for some tax stuff, and my bookkeeper thought it said $5,000, so it said $5,000. It was an honest mistake, right? So the state of Hawaii charged us an $8,000 penalty for being late. Like $8,000 on a $45,000 late is a crazy interest rate for a month that the state of Hawaii is charging. So anyway, so similar.
Yeah.
So that.
And I remember when you told me that, despite what I said, I was like, cool, just take it out of your bookkeeper's pay. But you're too nice. But it's interesting actually that you said like that rehab delegation and bookkeeping delegation were 2 of your big like banes of this year. And because like in our business years ago, like those were the 2 things that I constantly tried to outsource and figure out how to do better. And I realized that most of the issues were me. And like I was a bottleneck in a lot of those processes and challenges.
Yeah.
And I actually had a CFO consultant tell me like, cool, you want to get your bookkeeping figured out? Get the hell away from your own bookkeeping. Like, because I was messing it up and doing stuff.
Well,
And
that's like the thing is I was an accountant before I started real estate investing. I worked as an accountant. So like bookkeeping, like all of that is like my thing. So that's why it's hard for me to give control. Then my partner, he's all like the rehab, the construction. So like those were like the two things we were really good at. So like for us to give up control, and then just like we weren't good at overseeing someone else doing it. And that's what we really had to learn. We were good at physically doing it ourselves, but actually overseeing someone do it is where
because they're not doing it the way that you would do it. And so and you got to try to mold them into that. But that's a good point with delegation, because you also brought up systems. So people want to hire people want to create like delegations, hire VAs, whatever, and they think that if they just hire this magic person, it all gets taken care of. And in reality, if you don't have a system to come into, right, they're going to either create their own, which might not be what you want, or they're going to not know what the hell to do, and they're going to upset you in some way. And so knowing what you're going to do with these people when they come in, or having a process for it, is so important, especially as you grow. And too many of us like grow and then we go to try to figure it out, versus like we're building it as we're growing, right, and scaling up with it. I know, Brandon, you're actually, out of all the people I know, like that would just love to delegate literally almost everything. And you do a pretty good job at it. It's you, right? And I've seen you do it, right? And more than once, and then people will just do it, right? Or they try to, and then you get 50%. That's all I remember too. But for whatever it is, pretty much all the time. How about we do a business partnership together, Brandon, and then I'll do everything, but you still get 50%. That's pretty much how you roll. Yeah, that's how you roll.
Well, I had a conversation actually this morning with a gentleman here in Hawaii where we were talking about flipping, and he's like, well, if I find a really good deal, can I bring it to you and we'll work on it? And I was like, well, I'm happy to do it. I like getting half the profits on a flip, but I can tell you, like, I bring nothing to the table other than my good looks and personality. That's about it. Like, and like, he's like, that's all right. So I don't know. It's a fascinating, it really is. And it's, I have been all about 2020 has been the year of growth for me in terms of like that delegation. I like to say I'm trying to become like a general in a war, but the general doesn't get down and get the gun and go shoot the bad guys in a war unless they like have to, unless like the enemy's at the gate and they're like pounding on the door, then you go and fight. But the general stands over a map, and the general tells other people like, they see strategy and they see the big picture. So this year has been like, how can I be more of the general? Actually real life. Well, I mean, it's, I won't go into like a bunch of examples, but this entire year has just been, how do I work on the things that I work on best? I explained yesterday, I was on the, Jay Scott's, the business podcast with Jay and Carol.
Hey, no.
I'm plugging your show.
Jeez.
And I mentioned like the Dr. Oz analogy, which you may or may not have heard. And the idea being Dr. Oz, when he was in like the height of his popularity and he was like doing Oprah and he had his own TV show and he had a magazine and he was writing a book, after doing all that stuff, he was still doing 200 open heart surgeries every year. And the question is why? It's because when he wasn't cutting people open, he wasn't administering the anesthesia. He wasn't consoling the family before and after. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. He would walk in and do a cut. Like he did one cut and then he'd walk out. Like that was his entire job, was to do that cut, because that's what he was so good at doing. He was better than everybody else at that thing. That was his unique thing. So the question I've been asking myself all year is like, what really is my cut? Like, what's my Dr. Oz cut? And that's the question I pose to a lot of other people. And once you realize what your Dr. Oz cut is, it's easier to get other people doing their Dr. Oz cuts. And then when everyone's doing their Dr. Oz cuts, you buy 1,000 units in a year, which is what we did. So that's why I feel like this year was the year of that.
Brandon, I want to take that and kind of turn it to what we're just talking about, put those two things together. So I've heard you talk about this before, is how a lot of people ask, like, will you mentor more, blah, blah, blah. And you've always said, like, how can you add value to me? Everything like that. Well, when you're putting systems in place, the hardest thing is actually putting those systems in place and writing down, like, okay, I want this bookkeeper to do this, and you're going to do it this way, hand it into me. Like, putting that system in place is the hardest thing to do, at least for me. Yeah. And so I've been thinking about, if you really want to have someone mentor you and you really want to add value to them, give them the system of what you're going to do, or actually just do it for them. So I have someone that emailed me the other day and I just said, okay, And what they did was they emailed me how they're going to help me, and they just did it. So now they're sending me just the deals I'm looking for. Like
That's
they
cool.
didn't ask or anything like that. They just started doing it. And that was like, for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll help you because you really are adding value to me and I don't have to do anything. Like you're already sending me exactly what I needed. And with social media today, I mean, you can find out pretty much exactly what anybody needs.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
I did post a link to my article of the Bigger Pockets on the blog. They did put out an article about like the top 12 gifts to give real estate investors. So
there you go.
If anyone wants to send me anything, go ahead.
Well, it goes back
number
to
one, Lamborghini.
Yeah, paid Lamborghini. It's what you said. Like you had an interview with Steve Sims a month or two ago on the Bigger Pockets podcast, Real Estate One, and he said like, don't give people what they want, give them what they need, right? And so when it comes to your clients, and what you're saying, Ashley, is just like what do they need, and not so much what they're saying, but like what is it that they actually really need, and
then just do it for them. Because I think you had that. Was it with Mike that's on your team, Brandon, with that book, the Blue Fish book? Was that it?
That was
Steve Sims. Yeah,
that's Steve Sims.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
It's Blue Fishing.
Blue Fishing. Yeah.
Blue Fishing. Yeah.
So the good book. So now for what you're also saying, Ashley, on another level for delegation, and I've seen people I've made this mistake tons of times, which is like we try to tell them everything to do, right? And versus what I've learned, if you just go like, okay, what would you do? Right, to solve this, and just give them the power to go run. Right, I think a lot of us get into this business, or even just become self-employed or business owners, because we could be DIYers, do-it-yourselfers, or we don't like having bosses. So we forget that other people kind of want that same thing. And if you give them the reins or the lane that they can run in, like I like to create boxes, going like, this is your playground, this is your sandbox, do whatever you want in it. Right. So and just like, but here's your lane. I use lane on our business as much as possible. You can play in this lane. You can go run into traffic all day in this lane, all you want, right? And you own it, right? That is yours to control and own. And I have to work. Good rule
of thumb is if every time you delegate, you need to explain how something's being done, you've got the wrong people in your team.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing wrong with saying, hey, here's how I like things done. Here's how we do things in the company. But over and above that, you should be hiring people that know how to do that thing that you hired them to do. Because at the end of the day, if you're coaching them through every step of the way, every time they do it, they're more of a drain than they are a help in your business.
Correct. And
they're taking that initiative.
Yes.
Even if they don't know it, they're taking the initiative to learn it and do it themselves without having to constantly ask you.
Look, and we all have failures. Like I know one of my failures is that like as soon as you get hired, I give you that big, huge lane and I kind of ignore you. And then that's not always the best thing to do. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, here's what you could do. Let me nudge you. And like, let me give you SOPs. And then I finally have a line, right? As soon as it gets to that line, I step all over everything that you do. And that's not the best thing in the world. And I got to learn how to not do that. And I'm like, okay, if you're not doing it, here's exactly how you need to start doing it. And I need to back off on that sometimes. But I think we all have issues, right? That's my issue. Anyway, so let's get back to some questions. Let's see. We got Eric asking, what major pivots did you have to make this year in your businesses, if any? And what were your biggest takeaways from those big pivots? And pivots is this new fancy word the last couple of years have come out. So about major changes or shifts, if any.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Take it. I was just going to say, not even with, I guess, the past year and a half when tenant landlord laws changed in New York State. I mean, they went from a 3-day notice to a 14-day notice for evictions. It was a very drastic change. So for me, it was having to pivot to start looking and researching into out-of-state investing. And just the property taxes are very high in New York. So just those big things is the changes in the laws, the property tax, things that I really don't have too much control on, I guess, has made me want to pivot my business model to investing out of state.
Interesting. What about you, Jay?
Pivot. So, yeah, we haven't so much pivot as we have gotten smart about our business model. We've done a lot of transactional real estate over the years, flipping and wholesaling and this and that. And I've kind of over the last couple of years wanted to transition to buy and hold, and we have started transitioning. But this is the first year where that wasn't an afterthought. Kind of like, let's find houses to flip, and if we find some to hold, we'll hold them. This year it was, let's find houses to hold, and maybe if they don't make sense holding, we'll rent them, or we'll flip them. Excuse me. So this was the first year that like our goal was to just go after cash flow, and we bought a 150 unit, and it wasn't really a cash flow play; it was a syndication, which is transactional. But it's the next step towards buying some larger multifamily that we're going to hold for cash flow long term. And we also bought a bunch of single family homes, and so this year was basically the year of starting to build cash flow for us, and to turn some of that cash into to start working for us.
Love it, Mr. Brandon. Big pivot.
Yeah, probably the biggest pivot for me was I started the year flipping houses with a partner with a JV out here, and it was good. Like, this guy did most of the work. He found everything. He was awesome. I really like him a lot. His name's Greg. He's great. And then I was kind of the money side of it. So I'd arrange the money, the hard money lender, put the down payment, pay for the rehab costs and stuff like that. And it was fine. But I finally just got to the point where I realized I didn't feel light, even on the little stuff. Like, it didn't feel light to me. It felt heavy. And I really lean into the idea of light versus heavy. And so when things feel light, I want to do them. When things feel heavy, I mean, it doesn't mean hard or easy, right? Calling the doctor is heavy. We talked about that yesterday, Jay. Like, calling the doctor is super heavy for me just to make an appointment. Calling a masseuse to come and like to schedule an appointment to massage, like, that feels heavy. I hate doing it. Flipping just started feeling heavy to me for whatever reason. Everything time I had to do anything, it felt heavy. So even though we were really successful and we did like, I don't know, $250,000 in profit this year, I was just like, yeah, about a month and a half ago, I just said, I need to stop. I'm just going to shut it down. And so I set my partner up. We got set him up with another guy, and they're killing it right now. I'm actually kind of jealous now when I see their numbers. I'm like, oh man, I could have had that. Like, but I don't feel that bad at all, because like, I feel so much lighter now. So that was the biggest pivot for me, was just really leaning into the light versus heavy. And what feels light is doing podcasts, writing books, and investing in mobile home parks with my team. So I'm going to focus on that.
That also just goes back to, what do you enjoy, right? And so, and what do you maybe best at? And it's kind of a parallel between the two. And so it's the, continuously to do things like that you hate doing, or that, like you said, feel heavy. Like, why would you continue to build your life that way?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And despite the problem.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard because like there's good money. And it was like, I probably made, I don't know, call it $3,000 an hour is probably about the amount of money I made this year flipping houses, like $3,000 an hour. And most people would listen and be like, that is ridiculous. Why would you not take $3,000 an hour? It's just because, and so it's hard to give that up.
Because you can make $5,000 an hour doing other stuff that's less stressful for you.
And because the time with my kid is worth more than $3,000 an hour.
Correct. Yeah. Or there's just other quality of life aspects that you want, right? Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, like, we all have a friend that we all love and hold dear to our hearts, Jay Martin. Yeah. And Jay Martin is the epitome of, whatever, I don't care about making a ton of money. I'm traveling the world with my tiny little backpack and ukulele, and he invests in real estate. Yeah, but he doesn't give a shit about how much. Like, and he just lives his life because quality of life was more important to him than the income he was making. And so follow him. I think it's a Real Estate Nomad is his Instagram, but really cool guy. And I mean, that's something that Grace and I did back in late 2017, where we realized that I'm working my ass off and we're making a ton of money, but man, everything feels heavy, like you said, right? And quality of life was more important to us than continuing to build a big, huge business. And so we took a step back and reduced our business so that we can travel and enjoy our lives and do what we do now and so forth. And I think that's another thing that people need to reflect on. It's a lot easier once you have a business and you're making a bunch of money and you can make those choices, and versus when you're broke and can't pay your rent. But at the same time, having a plan for that is really what it's all about. And are you going to execute that plan? So,
and that's the thing. I mean, we work really hard, and so we can get to the point where we don't have to work as hard. And there are too many people that miss that first step. They want to jump right to that second step, which is I'm living off my cash flow and living the great life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, Jay Martin can do that. He's the first to say, I make less money than all of you guys. But his expenses are so low that it doesn't matter. Then there are all these people out there. I want to be a billionaire, but I don't want to work for it. I just want to get rich quick, and I want real estate just to make me an instant millionaire. It doesn't work that way. I mean, yeah, you can have great things. You can make a lot of cash flow, but you're going to have to work hard, or at least the less hard you work, the longer you're going to have to work. And so don't ignore that first step.
I think one of our big pivots or lessons that I had this year in our business was that, like, I've just been going with the flow the last few years in our business, and we've been flipping houses, doing our BRRRRs. Everything's been great. My wife and I've been traveling, 6 months out of the year, enjoying a great life. But like, when everything kind of hit with COVID, we're like, hey, we're cool. We got money, whatever's fine. We'll live. We missed a ton of opportunities because I was like terrified in April when we should have bought everything. When nobody was lending, we could have still bought them. And I passed on so many deals. And I'm like, God damn it. But I've done that most of my life. I'm super conservative investor. But besides point, but pivot wise was realizing that we don't really have a vision for our business, right? And we just flipped houses and did BRRRRs. That's what we did, right? And then we ran an events company. But we didn't really have like a purpose for any of those things other than just to make money and live a lifestyle, which was fine. But your team needs that vision. Your team, that people that are around you, that are a part of your life, want that vision and that purpose. They want to know where the train is going. And if you're like, we're just going to the next stop, see what happens, right? So, and you just keep doing that, eventually that starts to, people start losing vision because they can't see it. And I just lost the battery on my light too, as it just locked it turned off. I didn't plug it in. But that's something that we've been pivoting pretty hard on right now, at least for myself personally, is like, what is that vision going into our businesses so that we can continue to push forward? And I think 2020 was a good time to reflect. And I think a number of us did that to kind of see where our holes and weaknesses were in our businesses so we can start solving them and fixing them. But anyways, that's a big one for me.
This year, I really wanted to like narrow down my why, because I feel like saying your kids, your family, that's like so obvious. And I've always struggled with this because I never wanted it to be just that. So I found the word spontaneous, and was my big why now, is that I want my life to be spontaneous. I want to be able to travel when I want. I want to be able to start any business whenever I want. If I want to wake up and I want to learn about, opening a liquor store, I can do that. So that was like one big thing for me this year, is like finding that word spontaneous, and then how do I build my life so that it's that way, so that I can wake up and do whatever I want when I want. So
the funny thing about that, like, at least for some of us, I know for me, I love spontaneity as long as I have it in my schedule. And but it sounds funny, but it's true. So like, it's I'm going to be spontaneous between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. on that day on Wednesday.
Yeah, but think about it. You could probably move your schedule to be spontaneous if you wanted. Like how Brandon said he likes the podcast, the books, doing stuff like that. That's probably a lot easier to schedule around and move around or do remotely than if he's, like, hey, we got a deal, we need hard money. Like, you have to spend the next 2 days finding that. Like, he has to get that done, where there's the other things that are easier to be spontaneous with. I mean, I would be bored to death if I was just traveling, doing nothing, but I want to be able to pick and choose what I'm working on, I guess.
Yeah. Freedom, option, choices.
Spontaneous. Right?
Yeah. You have to have fun while you're doing it. And those of us who are truly blessed and lucky and fortunate are the ones that have figured out how we can grow our lives and our net worth and our businesses while still having fun. And it's not easy, but there are ways to do it. And you have to be introspective and you have to, sometimes there are trade-offs. I mean, literally this year, I haven't worked a job in 12 years because let me tell you something, I would never be a good employee again after being on my own for 12 years. But a couple months ago, I took a consulting gig in the tech world. And I did it because I loved my job before I quit my job. And after 12 years of being in real estate and not like working in the corporate tech world, I thought I'm missing something. There's something in my life. And I did something that 12 years ago, or for the last 12 years, I thought never do again. How could I ever like work for somebody, have a boss? But then I realized actually I enjoy that. And so I figured out a way to do that on my own terms. I didn't go back and get a 9 to 5. I took a consulting gig, 10 to 15 hours a week, that I can do it for as long as I want. I can quit when I want. But it's fun. And it's a way I can also make money. And so don't take things off the table. Like for 12 years, I took it off the table. I'll never work for anybody else again. I'll never work in the corporate environment. And then finally I realized, why not? I can enjoy it. I can do it on my own terms. I can make money doing it. And so don't take anything off the table. Think about, really think about who you are and what makes you happy and where that coincides with where you can make money and earn a living.
And being willing to change, like just because you said 12 years ago, like not being hard headed, like, well, I said I was never going to do that, so I'm not going to do it again, or what other people think, or I had told people on this huge webinar I was never going back to the consulting job. I can't do it now.
I got to stop you right there. Like the biggest lesson we learned in 2020 is that everybody else needs to change, not me. So that's the biggest lesson, right? That we all learned in 2020. Did we all get that yet? Right. So yeah, don't tell people that I'm not changing. You need to change, Ashley. Right. So anyways, I don't know. I think that's what we learned, right? Okay, cool. So
on social media,
I've always known that it's all about me.
It is. I'm right. Everybody else is wrong.
Exactly.
And there's no way you can have an alternative viewpoint of mine, because that would mean that I might be wrong and I'm not. So therefore you are. So
exactly.
Yeah, we learned that really hardcore this year. Now let's do something fun. Let's guess like what's going on in 2021 and educated guesses, right? And so we did learn a lot of stuff this year. I know for me, it's just like, I remember earlier this year, we had that whole phrase. I was saying it on videos, was like Warren Buffett says, like, when everybody is scared, invest, or whatever the heck it is, right? And everybody is excited, don't, right? Something like that. I totally quoted that correctly, I think. And I was even saying that, but yet I wasn't doing it. So I should have done it. But some of those lessons go into now, and we're like, okay, now I'm going to go kick ass and start investing. But that's, is that still a good idea? Should we be doing that in 2021? And what are your guys' business plans going into 2021? If you feel like sharing it, Brandon Turner.
We are pivoting a little bit to go right to that word, and I'm not necessarily, but we may pivot. And pivot's the wrong word. We may add on to what we're doing with our open door capital, and because we have a tremendous amount of ability to raise money, and there's just not enough of the exact type of mobile home parks that we want to fill what we could spend. And so we may be slightly adding on to what we want to do. So likely some multifamily in the near future as well, some larger multifamily, and maybe some more JVs on that in that world. So that's what we're doing in Open Door Capital, as long as the world doesn't melt down, which is, I think we'll be all right. But
so what if that on a side note for that, then, like, if you're going to pivot to that direction, like,
Yep.
what would make you want to start getting into multifamily then? Like, why choose that realm of investing?
I like workforce housing. I think that they're not building enough of it right now. I think that the majority of the building in the world, that building that is going on, is all in the A class, the high end stuff. And so I really like workforce housing. So if I can get into that, especially like the idea of like where some guys are in like the private public partnerships, I think that's fascinating. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think also building to rent, like, B class, I think is an interesting model to look into. So we're looking into all those options right now, and want to make sure that whatever we end up going into, if we're going to add it on, we want to make sure that we can be the best at it and find a niche, like we talked about earlier, that we can kind of dominate. But I really I just think that I love investing in things that are growing problems that have no solution on the horizon. And low income housing in America is one of those problems. Like, it's just increasingly a problem. And so I like to be the solution in there.
I know a very smart person building 300 million of workforce housing A- properties outside of Phoenix right now. So,
wow.
And build to rent, something that actually, it's funny, but Bigger Pockets, we're all bigger pockets contributors some way. none of us really talk about build to rent, but that's a huge
No.
industry actually out there right now that none of us really talk about. We talk about flips, you know, not even, we don't even talk about builds, but for multifamily, but build to rent is actually something that there are some pretty large companies going hardcore on that right now. And it's a really good in the right market. It's awesome. And some of them are finding that, like, with what happened with COVID, is that they changed some of their building plans to be able to like adapt to people having a little bit more open space and bigger working environment inside the home. And that's starting to kick off pretty well for some of these communities that are being built for people to be able to work from home, right? Which is kind of interesting. So, Ashley, what are you doing in 2021?
To give you a little backstory on it. So my husband is a dairy farmer. We live on a dairy farm. And I first got into real estate investing because I wanted him to stop milking cows. And that was my first why. And so I built my rental portfolio. And as I did that, I realized even if we were billionaires, he would still get up and milk cows every day, that he's not going to ever want to stop doing that. So I always thought that our rental income would, be our backup plan. Like something bad happened on the farm, or, if milk prices dropped, like, that would be the rentals would be our security. Like, that's our safety net. Well, when COVID hit and, eviction stopped, everything like that, and it was panic, like, oh my gosh, what if our tenants don't pay rent? It was like, well, the farm is still operating. That did not stop at all. And it was like, okay, we need to was take money from the farm to support the rental properties. And it was just like a complete 180, something I had never, ever thought would have happened. And, so our biggest thing is just multiple revenue streams. So like the liquor store building, it's a mixed use. So we're having residential income, rent income. We have commercial rent income. And then we also have the business revenue coming out of there. So going into 2021, we're going to look for more mixed use buildings, because I like to say that building is generating me, 3 different types of income. So really just, we're going to buy, we have under contract another farm where we can do more crops and stuff like that. But really just finding different ways to generate revenue so that we're not reliant on just 1 or 2 or even 3, that we have those multiple streams coming in.
Excellent choice. Let us know how that goes. So Jay Scott, you got a different question. I'm going to give you like one. Yeah, you go ahead and talk about what you want to do in 2021. But I also want to talk about what your projections are for 2021 with inflation, tax laws, all the crazy crap that's going on in the world right now. How that might affect us, because you seem to like that stuff more than me. So tell us, Jay, what have you been reading? What are you thinking?
I'm sitting here thinking about that scene from Rocky with Mr. T when, what's your prediction for the fight? He says, pain.
Pain.
No. I don't know. And it's one of these crazy things I've been saying since we started this in March, that with COVID and all the crazy stimulus, things can kind of go any which way, and nobody can really predict, and things are going to start settling down, and we'll figure out where the economy is once the stimulus ends. As of now, it looks like it's not coming to a complete end. We have got another bill that may or may not get passed over the next couple of weeks. There could be more bills after that. Nobody has any idea. But at some point, the music's going to stop, and we're going to see who gets the chair and where the Brandon just disappeared.
He's playing with his A10 Mini Pro.
At some point,
the button, I didn't know what it did. I was like,
now you know. It distracts me. At some point, the music's going to stop, and we're going to see where the economy ends. And so, for anybody out there that instead of me trying to predict where things are going to go, let me say this: I've talked a lot about the economy. I wrote a book last year about different phases of the economy and what we, as real estate investors, should be doing at different phases of the economic cycle. When I wrote that book, nobody, at least not I, could have imagined what we'd be seeing now. We're basically nowhere in that economic cycle. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so people ask me, so are we like still in the expansion phase? Are we at the peak of the cycle? Are we at the bottom in the worst parts of the recession? Are we trending? I have no idea. But here's one of the cool things. There's only one strategy in real estate that works no matter what phase of the economic cycle you're in. And that's buy and hold for cash flow. If you're buying and holding for cash flow, it doesn't matter if you're buying on the way up. It doesn't matter if you're buying at the peak, if you're on the way down or at the bottom. It doesn't matter because what we typically see with even during recessions, typically rents don't drop very much. And especially in periods of economic expansion or even recession where we see inflation, rents are going up. Even if during 2008, there were periods, places in this country where rents were going up. And even in the places where rents were going down, they weren't going down considerably. It wasn't like values dropping 20, 30, 40% in some areas. Rents might have been dropping 2, 3, 4%. So if you're buying for cash flow, it doesn't matter where we are in the economic cycle. You're going to continue to make money off of cash flow. Maybe your property is going to drop in value. Maybe the market's going to fall out from under you and things are going to drop 20, 30, 40, 50%. But as long as you're making cash flow, it doesn't matter because you're going to hold that property for 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 30 years. And by the time you want to sell it, property values are going to be up again. So no matter where you think we're headed in 2021, you think the market's going to be good or bad, focus on buying cash flowing properties because that way you don't need to be right. If you're right, great. But if you're wrong, it doesn't matter because cash flowing properties are going to work in any market. So go ahead.
I want to add on to that though, like, because there might be some people listening to what you're saying go like, yeah, but there's a lot of people that lost their ass in 2008, 2009 that had rentals. But there's a reason for that. It wasn't technically it wasn't because like rents dropped. It was because it was because their mortgages shifted. And they had like a 1 month introductory rate, and all of a sudden it fluctuated like crazy. So their costs went up a lot, but their rent stayed the same. And that's something to think about when you're getting your mortgages today, and what that might.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody: debt leverage is a tool, and you wouldn't hire a carpenter that didn't know how to swing a hammer, would you? You wouldn't hire a painter that didn't know how to use a paintbrush. People need to know how to use their tools. If they don't know how to use their tools, they're worthless. And as real estate investors, if we don't understand how debt and leverage and all this other financial stuff works, we're basically workers without understanding our tools, and we will fail. So it's our job as real estate investors to understand things like debt and leverage and what over leverage means and what the risks are of having too much leverage or even too little leverage. And so that's our job as a real estate investor. So yeah, it doesn't go without saying, but I hope everybody realizes that shouldn't be an afterthought. That is a key component of being a successful real estate investor. Know how your tools work, and debt is a tool.
I love that you said that because like I only do this for a few. I consult one of these companies, and we went through this major thing. They were just so stuck on this thing about their rehab processes, all this stuff, and how the houses are looking. And I'm like, look, what are you? They're like, well, we invest. I'm like, are you really investing? Because you haven't talked about numbers in a long time. Like it's about the numbers. It's about the money you invest. That's what you do. That is what we're doing. It's not about like what kind of window pane you should put in. It's the actual numbers. You're an investor. So, and tools, and part of that tool is, part of investing is the debt that you're speaking of, Jay. And we got to all remember that throughout this, like we're investors. That's what we do. And if you're like Brandon that has a fund, that a bunch of people invested into, he's responsible to make sure that he's investing correctly and the numbers are right. And for all those other people that gave him money. Jay, continue. Sorry.
And I invest in Brandon's fund. Why do I invest in Brandon's fund? Because I know Brandon knows the numbers, and his
That's risky,
team.
Dude.
He has people whose sole job it is in his company to look at the numbers and to understand the numbers. And so don't invest with anybody that doesn't understand their numbers. That said,
thanks,
let's
Jay.
go. What was that?
Thank you, Jay.
No, thank you.
You guys just keep plugging each other this whole time.
And I don't know. But it's true. I mean, I could talk about Brandon all day, but the fact that I put money with Brandon is more than talk. And so anyway, let's talk about debt a little bit more. So we've talked a little bit about inflation in the past, and a lot of people think that we're heading into this inflationary environment, basically where the price of things is going to go up. Debt is a good thing when we have inflation. And it's another reason why we really need to understand debt. I'm a big proponent of you never overuse debt. I probably have less debt than most people because I sleep better at night without it. But if there's going to be inflation, having some debt Borrowing money is one of the single best hedges against that inflation. So learn and understand about how inflation works and how debt works. Now, as for what I plan to do in 2021, I plan to start correcting, or I guess this year I started correcting, but I plan to continue correcting all those mistakes I've made over the last 12 years of focusing too much on transactional real estate and not enough on long-term cash flowing tax advantage real estate. So in 2021, I plan to do more multifamily. Brandon talked about ground up construction of multifamily. That's something we're looking at too. I didn't even realize Brandon was doing that. Now we have a topic to discuss. I plan to buy more cash flowing rentals. I plan to invest in more syndications so that I can take advantage of the tax benefits. We're probably going to do our own syndications, but when you run a syndication, you often don't get to take advantage of the tax benefits. But tax benefits are huge, and we haven't yet talked about the fact that we have a new administration in office, and we're likely to see taxes go up, both corporate taxes and personal taxes. And when that happens, one of the best ways to mitigate a rising marginal tax rate is more depreciation and tax advantage real estate. So I'll be doing more of that in 2021. So basically everything we're going to be doing in 2021 is going to be focused longer term. We're also doing some business stuff. We're doing some angel investing, so investing in businesses. But most of the stuff we're doing is going to be longer term focused, as opposed to the stuff we've been doing the last 10 years, which is focused 3 months out flipping houses.
Yeah, that's you and me both, bro. So let's now talk about, like, if you're just starting out in real estate, and because if you're in this game and you're in it pretty hardcore, you've been asking yourself these questions for a long time already. And hopefully making some adjustments and some changes into 2021. But if you're just starting out, right, maybe you're like, man, am I missing an opportunity here? Should I even now? I'm going to wait till the crash happens, then I'm going to get started, and then I'll definitely buy. Well, will it ever happen? So, Ashley, you're the expert on rookies, right? So, Bigger Pockets Rookie Real Estate Podcast. Is that it?
Yeah, close enough.
Right, close enough. Right. So if somebody's just starting out in real estate, what kind of advice can we give them going into 2021?
Well, I think it depends on what strategy you want to do. But if you're going for like buy and hold, you're not going to sell it. So as it had been mentioned multiple times, it doesn't really matter that much as to what market you're going to be in. If you can keep your cash flow high so that if your property taxes go up, that's still all going to be covered. But the biggest thing is, and you guys have mentioned it a couple times, that you already have regrets just from this year from not buying. So I think definitely don't stop yourself from taking action. Even if you find a way that you want to play it very safely, like maybe you originally had a plan to, have 5 units in the first year. Even if you only do 1 unit in the first year and you play it safe, definitely don't over leverage yourself. If you need to maybe save up a little more of a down payment to make yourself feel more comfortable, I always like to say the numbers matter a lot, but it's also what helps you sleep at night. So like I could be getting a better return because maybe have infinite cash on cash return because I'm not putting any cash into the deal, but I might be 100% leveraged then. That's not going to help me sleep at night. So that's really important to me too. Especially when things are very uncertain, what will help me sleep at night so that I know that my bases are covered. But really just still take action would be my advice. And you can definitely do real estate safely. Maybe you'd like to look into turnkey investments, but there's definitely still a lot of opportunity out there.
Love that. Brandon, you're also the resident expert on new investors. You talk to them every week.
I do talk to them a lot.
What kind of advice can you give them going into 2021?
I really like Ashley's advice of the, even if it's just one property, the most important thing you can do right now is build momentum and knowledge and credibility and all that. It all starts with the first one. It's like the quote I've been saying a lot lately about the first belt is the white belt is the hardest belt when it comes to
we were talking about that.
Right? Isn't that good?
Yeah.
So the white belt is the hardest belt because it's the one that nobody ever does, even though it's like the first one you get just by showing up. The first deal is the hardest deal because most people don't do it. So I like that advice a lot. I'm such a big proponent. If you've been to any of my webinars, I teach this stuff all the time, is really take the idea of I want to invest in real estate down to very, very tangible tactical steps and make it habit or process or routine, whatever word you want to use there. So like, I'm going to analyze one deal every single day. I'm going to make one offer every single week and track that stuff. I'm just such a big believer in like tracking your habits. I mean, this is how I like lost like 40 pounds like a year and a half ago, and I've kept it off. Is I just track everything I eat. And that way, like when you track stuff, it just tends to improve. So yeah, that would be my best advice, is to start tracking stuff. Like if you have to analyze 100 deals, make 10 offers to get one, great. Do that every month. Do that every 2 months. Like it's just a business. That's all we're doing here.
That's all it is. And I love that you said that, because like I remember, so actually my buddy who's right over there, he's a former business associate of mine that I used to be in financial services. He's still in it, right? And then he's crushing it. But him and I train self-employed people all the time, right? And you're a self-employed salesperson or commission-only person, salesperson. Like you sit there at the end of each week or the end of the month, you'd hear your agents bitch about how they didn't make any money, and you're like, "Cool, what did you do?" So and they're like, "Oh, I did a lot, right?" Like, okay, can you show me? Can you like, how many calls did you make? Like, how many appointments did you go on? Like, what activity did you do Monday through Friday, and Saturday, Sunday? Like, and they don't have any of that. They can't show it, right? And it's amazing what happens in this business. We all know, Brandon and Ashley, we know people that are successful business owners, and they come into real estate and they mess it all up, and they forget everything they learned in their business that they run. They just throw it out the window for some reason because they think it's different in real estate. At least I've seen that. And if you just say, okay, this is self-employed, this is a business, right? So you actually have to treat it like one. And if you're going to make phone calls, well, you got to do it every week, right? Or every day. If you're going to analyze deals, you got to do it every day. And you got to track it, just like you said, Brandon. And then at the end of each week, you could see, what activity did I really do this week in my business? I watched a bunch of Brandon's videos and listened to Ashley's rookie stuff. Okay, that's cool. That's education. But what did you do, right? Did you just think about it? Or did you make 10 phone calls? Or did you send 100 letters? Or did you analyze 15 properties? Did you put out? No, I didn't do any of that. Okay, cool. No wonder you get the results you get, right? At that point. But anyways.
And you have to remember too that, even though we don't know what's going to happen in 2021, that there are successful real estate investors who had the perfect market conditions and still had a horrible first deal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that can happen. You can have a bad deal and you can still be successful. Actually, I think Jay's first deal was actually really bad. I think he talked about it on the Rookie podcast. Maybe he can talk about it on there, but
we'll never know because Jay's on a phone call right now. And he's dead to me. No, I mean, I know lots of successful real estate investors that have a really bad 100th deal. So like, for us, we lost $86,000 on one deal and just a single family fix and flip, which was the easiest flip ever. Yet I messed it up pretty bad just from, not taking my own lessons and things learned and, and so forth. Like, and on that point, hey, Jay, same question to you that we just gave to Ashley and Brandon. Go ahead and go.
Okay. Yeah. So that was me dealing with the biggest mistake I made in 2020. So I apologize. I jumped off, but that's my plumber handling that property that I screwed up. And so, okay. So the answer to that question was definitely yes.
Perfect. All right. Next question. So we all agree on that one. The why yes though? I mean, we all said no. I don't understand though.
Because you're not thinking long-term enough.
Good point.
Jay, to go back, your first deal was not a great deal, right? At first,
my first deal was the best deal I ever did because it got me to do my second and fifth and 10th and 500th. In that respect,
we were just talking about like getting started in 2021, even if you don't know what's going to happen. And I said that even like, people who already are successful have.
Oh yeah, let me tell you about my first deal because this is important for anybody that's looking to get started. We made every mistake in the book on our first deal. We paid too much because we trusted a wholesaler that we shouldn't have trusted. First time I learned the lesson of buck stops with me. The rehab cost like twice as much as my contractor told me it was going to cost. Again, my fault. We went to list it and we couldn't sell it, so we had to rent it out. We ended up lease optioning it for 2.5 years. The people that lease optioned it stopped paying. They destroyed the place and they moved out after 2.5 years. So we had to do a second rehab. And then we sold it even after 2.5 years. We sold it for less than our original ARV on the property. We made $1,200 on that deal. How did we make $1,200? We were conservative. we assumed we'd pay too much. We assumed that our rehab would go over budget. We assumed we'd sell it for less than we could. And even with all those assumptions, and we hit those assumptions exactly, we hit all of our worst case assumptions. We knew we'd pretty much break even, and we did. Had we lost a few $1,000s? Great. Had we made a few $1,000s? Great. But let me tell you something, that first deal, we learned more on that first deal than I've learned on the 500 deals I've done since then, all put together. Because that first deal, you get the context. You can read books all day long, and trust me, I'd love for you to buy my book, but you don't have to.
Always plugging.
No, I'm telling people. No, I'm telling people you don't need to buy my book. You don't need to buy Brandon's book. You don't need to buy anybody's book, because let me tell you something. You'll
buy
learn.
Tarl's book. Buy Tarl's book.
Yeah, buy
Tarl's book. You'll learn more on that first deal than you'll learn reading every book in the planet, talking to every smart investor on the planet, because it all kind of falls into place. All those amorphous concepts actually become real to you, and you see the bigger picture, you see the context. And so don't go into that first deal thinking I've got to make $20,000 or $50,000. Go in there thinking I'd love to make $20,000 or $50,000, but if everything goes wrong and I still break even, it is the biggest win in the world, because it'll get you to that second and third and fifth deal. I talk about this all the time. I never meet investors who've done one deal. 95, 96, 99% of the investors I meet have done 0 deals and will never do a deal. The other 1%, they've done dozens of deals, or they will do dozens of deals. People don't do one deal in this business, because if you can do one, you're going to do 2 and 5 and 10 and 50. So my biggest piece of advice to everybody is do that one deal come hell or high water.
100%.
Because once you do, you will keep going.
As long as the numbers make sense. So I just want to
and you have the reserves in place.
Yes, have the reserves. Again, you need to know your tools and all your financing, all your financials. That's the tools that you need to understand before you jump in.
Yes. So
if you'd like to hear more of Jay's story about that first deal, you can go to biggerpockets.com/rookie12.
Look, I just gotta admit, like, we've been doing this show for like 6, 7, 8 months. We've never had so many freaking plugs in one show. So never, not one. We maybe do like 0 to 1, right? Like throughout our entire show. But
I think the stuff we and the total cost of all the stuff we plugged is about 18 cents.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll make a whole 9 cents when somebody buys my book.
That's right.
Exactly.
So let's wrap up, guys. So we've gone on for a little while. And I want to ask you guys one last question. What kind of advice can you guys give people one last time going into 2021? And anything you want to share, I don't care what it is, as long as it's not a plug, then ready, go. Ashley.
My advice would be, if you are a rookie trying to get started and you still are nervous about getting your first deal, then at least
listen to the Bigger Pockets Rookie Podcast.
Everybody already knows that. I don't have to tell them. So, okay, don't want to take action on your first deal yet. You're still nervous. At least get into the real estate industry. So maybe you get a part-time job, you get a full-time job, you switch careers, but there are so many opportunities out there to be involved in real estate where you can grow your network. You can get access to leases. You can see what units are. A favorite of mine is become a leasing agent. You can work that, on Sundays, maybe one weeknight. You'll get access to the lease documents. You'll get to see what apartments in your area look like. You'll get to show tenants and learn what they like in apartments. Another thing is, look to people in your area, go to meetups and find out what properties they want, do driving for dollars, send them leads, things like that. But my favorite are the things that you can actually be paid for. I started out as a property manager when I quit my accounting job, and I was paid to learn all about property management, all about real estate investing. So if you can be paid to get experience and get yourself into the industry, that would be my advice.
I love that advice. Especially that goes back to what we said earlier about what value can you give to even other investors or other people if you want to start working in their shoes. And you're basically saying, like, go get in the industry somehow, right? Whatever it might be. And hopefully you can get paid in it as well and give back. We have our co-producer that's on, that you guys can't see right now, Alex. He came up to me at a meetup saying, I love that you guys do videos. I do videos. Can I just make them for you? Right. And then in return, teach me real estate. I'm like, yeah, we need a video guy. So he's been with us now for over a year, and he actually helps in the property management, like you said, and he gets paid by my wife to do that. He drives properties for this fix and flip. He makes the videos for us and helps with that. Like, he's helping with the webinar, and he's integrated with everything we do, all because he gave something first to try to help out our business, like legitimately before he ever asked for anything. So
that's a great example.
works.
One more thing to add to that is I met a sheriff recently who said that when he was in college, he would do in between his classes, he would do a maintenance request in between his classes. Like every morning he would get them emailed to him and he would go out and fulfill those maintenance requests for that investor. And he got to know the investor, and the investor, introduced him to his network. And then that's how he became an investor himself.
That's awesome. Mr. J.
Yeah, I'm going to go with something different. I don't normally say this, but it's really important. Build your network. I'm an introvert, and so I find it very difficult to talk to people, but it is so important, especially when you're starting out in this business, to meet people and talk to people, because you never know where a connection can come in handy. And I'm going to tell one of my favorite stories from 2020 now, if Ashley's okay with me telling the story.
Yeah, definitely.
So
we haven't really talked about it.
No, we haven't
at all. Yeah.
We haven't. So Ashley and I have actually never met face to face. We just kind of know each other through Bigger Pockets, and
because you didn't come to the virtual expo, but whatever.
That's true. That's true. I did virtually. Ashley mentioned that they live on a dairy farm, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And when she says the middle of nowhere, it's where people who live in the middle of nowhere go when they need to get away and relax. It's like the edge of nowhere. But it turns out that Ashley is like one of 3 people that lives in the middle of nowhere in this area. My mother-in-law actually lives in the same little town or one town over. And when my mother-in-law needed to sell her house, or was ready to sell her house that my wife grew up in and that she's owned for 50 years, we knew Ashley. And we knew Ashley was one of the few investors that actually invest in that area, because I had talked to Ashley and we networked and we found out what each other did and where each other lived. And my mother-in-law just didn't feel like dealing with having to get her house ready to show. And so I picked up the phone, or actually my wife picked up the phone and called Ashley and said, "Hey, you want to buy a house?" And so Ashley, about 2 months ago, bought my mother-in-law's house in this tiny little town that probably nobody in the rest of the world has ever heard of. So networks are important, and people are important, and tell everybody what you do and where you do it and how you do it. And these relationships are going to pay off, because even if you only get one of those types of deals a year, even if you only sell one house a year doing that, over a 20-year career, that's 20 deals just made based on random relationships of you just networking with random people. So expand your network, work hard every day to do that.
50% of my deals have been from word of mouth, people knowing that I invest, and they've brought the deals to me.
50% of my deals, 100% of the time, are Brandon Turner.
All right. So what was the question? It was best advice for,
or whatever advice you want to give. Just say something.
All right, here we go. Grab a pen, because I'm going to tell you exactly how to find a property in 2021. I want you to first set a 3-year vision for yourself, right? So a 3-year vision, where you want your business to head in the next 3 years. After that, I want you to write down what you got to get in this year to accomplish that 3-year goal. So if your goal is, I want $5,000 a month within 3 years, great. This year, your goal is to buy your first 2 properties. Great. Set a quarterly goal. Okay, so now your quarterly goal is, I want to get a property under contract in the first quarter. Great. What do you got to do to line that up this week? So this week, I'm going to send out my first batch of direct mail letters. Great. If that's what you want to do, make that your quarterly thing. Then every single morning, wake up, and I want you to write down what the goal is. I want you to write why you want that goal. And I want you to explain what you had to get done that week. Right? You already know what that is. And then finally, what are you going to do today? And what's the next step to get that done? If you just follow that path, you're going to get the results that you want. You're going to buy the property. You're going to have the vision, and your life's going to be amazing. That's what I got. Good.
Sounds simple enough.
Sounds simple enough. It is.
Yeah. Have a plan. Right. I'm big on that. The
works.
I saw your post on that today.
Oh, you did? Yeah, you like that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's
so
good.
I have a thing. Yeah. Check out my Instagram. No big deal. Just another plug at Tarl Yarber on Instagram. So I'm the only one. Yeah, the post was like, I mentioned how like I don't really make goals. I make plans. And like it's something, I don't know why I've never been good at goals, but I can make plans. And so you would never hire a contractor that had a goal to build you a house, right? But you'd hire one that had a plan, right? And so anyways, I did a whole post because we have our dog here in Hawaii with us, and I don't know where it came out of it, but I've been learning from Brandon to do some really like generic out of nowhere post and then ask a very specific question that has something to do with that. So
pretty good.
It's pretty good. Like, so he'll talk about like bananas and da. So the question is though,
what's
your banana that you're looking for? Yeah. So Brandon's
a call to action.
Yeah,
That's how you get it.
That's how he does it. So I'm like, you got to live for that.
Can I add one more?
Yeah, go for it.
Everybody take time and be grateful.
For what?
If you're on for whatever you have. We've interviewed a lot of people on the business podcast this year who are struggling, who are dealing with, well, we all know what everybody's dealing with. And what I found is that those who are truly grateful for what they have, not for what they don't have, not for what they've lost, tend to be much happier and are figuring out how to overcome the roadblocks that they're facing. So just everybody think about all the good stuff, and not everybody has every good thing going on, but we all have some good stuff going on. And so just be grateful every day for what you have, because at the end of the day, if you can maintain that attitude, you're going to be a lot happier and a lot more successful long-term.
Turn off the effing news.
Oh yeah.
Stop watching it. That is if you want to have a happy and grateful 2021, stop watching the news and get off social media, right? And even if it means stop following Brandon Turner, just stop following him.
Stop following him.
Yeah, it's actually
getting weird, dude.
Yeah, before you deactivate your account, make sure you go ahead and unfollow.
We talked about that the other day, and we're like, we both, so like, man, like people, like if they want to have a better life, they got to stop doing this stuff. They're like, but then they'll stop following you, and that's the catch-22.
Don't listen to Tarl. Terrible advice.
Yeah, look, I'm one person that I am the least news watched person you'll ever meet, and the only way I know news is I talk to other people and I watch JP Sears on YouTube. But that's it. Like I don't actually, I've done that for years. And I don't get inundated with that. And because of that, I don't know, I think that if you stop getting inundated with those kind of like those messages, it's designed to keep you watching and live in fear. That's what it's designed to do, right? So that you keep watching it and you'll start having a better life. I had a better life. I have a much better life when I stopped watching the news years ago. And I don't even do any of it. So especially right now, and then learn to listen to other people and actually listen, right? Even if they have an opposing view from you, and just listen to them. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. Just hear them out. And because they also want to raise their family, they want to earn income, they want to have a happy life, just like you. They just might have a different viewpoint on something. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to get to the same direction, the same path, same place, same location, which is.
I used to spend way too much of my time arguing with people over politics and stupid stuff. And then when you realize that we're all basically the same and there's nothing wrong with having differing opinions, and focus on the positive, focus on the good things in life, hang around positive people, and everything gets better.
Surprising how that happens. And you're more grateful too.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
All right. However, that contrails into or like relates to real estate, it does a lot. So whether you believe it or not. All right, guys. Thank you once again, Brandon. How did they get a hold of you?
You can come to my house. My address is 30. You can find me on Beardy Instagram at Beardy Brandon.
Instagram, Beardy Brandon. Yeah, Beardy Brandon. Ashley.
Beardy Brandon. Beardy Y.
You can listen to The Real Estate Rookie. Also, biggerpockets.com. I have an account on there. And then on Instagram at Wealth Firm Rentals.
And Jay Scott.
Make it easy. www.connectwithjayscott.com. And that'll send you out to wherever you need to go.
And I am at Tarl Yarber on Instagram. Get onto social media just to follow me and then close it out. After you get addicted to it. All right. That's it, guys. Thanks once again. We are not doing a show next week. We'll be back sometime in 2021. And happy holidays, everybody. Enjoy your New Year's.
Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy holidays. Happy New Year. Holidays. Thank you, Brandon, Ashley, Jay Scott. Miss you all. Bye. Bye.
Bye.